I'm Hadassah, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Real Woman, Real Torah, a project of Bacheva Learning Center. We're here to offer you an authentic Torah learning experience, produced for women, by women. I hope you enjoy. Hello everyone, and welcome to Real Woman, Real Torah. Today we're going to be exploring the Yom Tif of Tu B'Shvat. But more than just Tu B'Shvat, we're really going to gain deeper insight into what the essential nature of Torah learning is all about, and why Torah enables us to connect to Hashem in this profound way that is associated with and linked to this experience of pleasure that is symbolized by the fruit tree that was celebrated in Tu B'Shvat. So it's really going to give us a whole new appreciation and understanding of what Torah is all about, and also give us a new appreciation for what the Yom Tif of Tu B'Shvat is all about. So the source for the Yom Tif of Tu B'Shvat is in the Mishnah, which lists a series of Rosh Hashanahs for various things, and one of them is the Rosh Hashanah of trees, which is the 15th of the month of Shvat. And on a simple level, this is just telling us that this is the day of the year that the trees are judged, just like any other Rosh Hashanah for anything else in creation. But the fact that we mark this and celebrate this on the Jewish calendar means that there's some deeper significance here. And if we take a step back, we'll notice that really the agricultural cycle is very central to a lot of the Yom Tovim that we celebrate, specifically the Shalosh Regalim. And there is something about the agricultural cycle that tells us something very profound about our relationship with Hashem, which is why we have so much significance placed on these various processes involved in planting and harvesting. And there's something about that tells us something essential about our relationship with Hashem. So we're going to begin by looking at the Midrash. And I'll just remind you that all the ideas that I'm sharing here are all from sources that are in a source book, which is available on our website for purchase. You can download the source book as a digital file, or you can order copies to print for yourself or for a community event. This is really a resource for you to be able to really learn these ideas and delve into them further. And I highly recommend you look at the sources in the original for yourself. Nothing can replace the learning and the study in the original source. So we're going to begin with a midrash from Shemais Rabbah, which tells a story about a man who has a field, and his field is covered in pebbles. And he clearly does not see much value in this field, so he sells it to somebody else. And the buyer looks at this field and clears away the rubble and digs deep inside the ground and discovers a spring of water. And then he plants spices, and he plants grapevines, and he plants pomegranate trees, and he creates this beautiful, gorgeous garden out of this field. And people walk by and they're enamored by the beauty of this garden that this person was able to create. And one day the seller walks by and he looks at the garden and he is amazed. And he says, "Wow, I am so regretful that I sold this field and that I did not see the potential that this buyer saw. All I saw was a field that was just covered in rocks. And this buyer was able to see beneath the surface what was really the potential that lay buried inside this field." And this is a mashal that's given for the Jewish people when they left Mitzrayim. So while they were in Mitzrayim, they were slaves, not just physically, but also spiritually. Their mentality was a slave mentality. And the people, the people who would look at the Jewish people as they were in Mitzrayim wouldn't see anything special about them. They wouldn't see any special potential latent inside these people. In fact, they looked very much like all the other nations of the world. And when Hashem took them out of Mitzrayim, Hashem looked at the Jewish people and said, I see this potential inside you. I see these treasures and this beauty that is just waiting to be uncovered. And when Hashem takes us out of Mitzrayim and makes us his people, he's really digging beneath the surface of this field and discovering this wealth of beauty and richness inside the Jewish people. And the Alter Rebbe and Torah R also kind of elaborates on this metaphor a little more and talks about how when a person plants a seed in a garden or in a field, they this one little seed is able to reap tons and tons of produce and fruits and vegetables and grains. And there's so much abundance that's able to be actualized through that planting. And Hashem really does the same thing when he invests in the Jewish people. And from that small investment, is able to reap so much abundance of spirituality and godliness that we spread throughout the world. So this is the metaphor, and we see that this is also this idea of the Jewish people being like Hashem's field is also the reason why the Shalosh Regalim, so Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, are all centered around the agricultural cycle, right? So Shavuos is called Chag HaKatzir, and Sukkot is called Chag HaAsif, and we see that we even create a leap year and add an extra month in the year just to ensure that these Yamim Tovim will be centered around that time of year when all those things are happening, because there's something about the agricultural cycle that is central to our celebration of these holidays. And the reason for that is that everything that exists in our physical world is really a mirror of something of a spiritual reality. And it's not that our reality is the real thing and it's just a metaphor for something else, some other reality, but the spiritual reality is actually what's more real, right? That's what's really happening, is that there's some sort of journey that we as a Jewish people go through in our relationship with Hashem throughout the year. And the fact that here on earth, there is this cycle of planting and harvesting that happens is really just a reflection or a manifestation of that spiritual reality, that spiritual dynamic that we have in our relationship with Hashem. So just applying that to Tu B'Shvat also must in some way, on the one hand, be a celebration of a physical tree, that this is the Rosh Hashanah for the physical trees that exist in our world. And yet a tree that we see here on earth is really just like a map, like a symbol on a map for some other reality that it descends from, right? And there's something else, some other quality, spiritual quality of our relationship with Hashem that is the real celebration that's happening on Tu B'Shvat. And as an outgrowth of that, there's also the celebration of the physical tree. So what is that quality? What is that quality in our Avodas Hashem, more specifically, right, that the fruit tree represents for us on Tu B'Shvat? So to understand that, we have to look at a pasuk in the Torah that describes the prohibition of not cutting down a tree. A fruit tree, while the Jewish people are going to battle. And the words in the pasuk are ki ha'adam eitz hasada, right? And this is sort of a rhetorical question where the Torah is asking, is the fruit tree like a human being, like a man, that you should besiege it, right? Even if you're going to war and besieging a nation does not mean that it does not justify you cutting down a fruit tree. And the Gemara comments on this and analyzes that statement, ki ha'adam eitz hasada, and it says, it associates this comparison of Adam to a fruit tree to specifically the Torah scholar, right? That the Adam specifically refers to a Talmud Chacham, someone who studies Torah. And what this pasuk is really telling us is that if a Torah scholar is worthy, then we should learn from him and not cut it down. We're forbidden from cutting down, or we're forbidden from we're obligated to learn from that Torah scholar. But if the Torah scholar is not worthy, not really a fitting Torah scholar, then indeed we would be allowed to cut it down, or in other words, not learn from his words. So what we see is that the Gemara is associating the word Adam, which is connected to a fruit tree or represented by a fruit tree, with specifically Torah learning. And we see this also in the word Adam, right? We know that there are many different words in the Torah used to describe a human being. There is Adam, Ish, Gever, and each of those really describe a different quality of a human being. And Adam specifically refers to the intellect, right? The capacity for a human being to have intelligence, to be able to understand ideas. And that is specifically what is referred to by the term Adam. So when we say that Ki Adam Eitz Hasada, that Adam is referred to a fruit tree, we're talking specifically about the quality of a person, which is their mind, their intellect, and the way that that part of a human being is utilized in their service of Hashem is through Torah learning. So something about the fruit tree is specifically symbolic of the relationship with Hashem that we have through Torah study, as opposed to any other type of Avodas Hashem. So in order to understand that more, to understand more about why the fruit tree symbolizes specifically Torah learning, we have to go into a discussion about the difference between Torah and mitzvos in general, right? So what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is when Hashem has a will and a wisdom that is beyond the world, and Hashem communicates that to us in order to refine us and in order to refine our world, right? So we have the mitzvah of Shabbos, we have the mitzvah of kosher, right? And there's some like divine will or divine wisdom that Hashem communicates to us by giving us this mitzvah. And when we fulfill that mitzvah, we're able to actually bring that godly wisdom and will into our world and to refine and elevate our world. And that quality of a mitzvah is actually seen in the metaphor of planting. So this metaphor of planting, there's really two specific qualities of planting that can serve as a metaphor for what a mitzvah is. One of them is that the same way a seed, when you plant it in the soil, not only is the seed then able to sprout into something much grander than it can on its own, but it also activates and triggers something very powerful within the earth. So the earth, once the seed is planted in it, is able to produce something and actualize its latent potential to produce produce and plants and flowers or whatever it is, right? So the seed actually triggers this latent potential that exists in the earth. And that is a metaphor for the way Hashem plants the neshama, the godly soul, into the human being, into our body and into our animal soul. And not only does that allow the godly soul to achieve great heights, but it also triggers and activates this potential that exists in the body and in the animal soul, so that it can reach its potential and it can actualize itself in the ultimate way. So that's one aspect of the metaphor of planting. And the other aspect is that how does it do that? How is the seed able to accomplish that kind of growth? Is specifically when the seed disintegrates, when it decomposes in the earth, right? That is when it's able to accomplish this type of growth. And that is symbolic of the way that we are able to grow in our own relationship with Hashem is specifically when we go through this process of humility. We're able to let go of ourselves, let go of our egos, of all of our sense of self, and submit ourselves to something higher than us. That is the way that we can connect to Hashem and really develop and grow in our relationship with Hashem. Now, both of those qualities, both the fact that the neshama is able to activate and refine and elevate and bring out the potential within the animal soul, and the fact that it does that by through this process of bittul, through this process of letting go of itself and disintegrating and being transparent to something beyond it. Both of those are specific qualities of a mitzvah, right? A mitzvah specifically has that ability to both refine and elevate the person, and are a vehicle through which we submit our own will to Hashem's will. But both of those don't really accurately describe what Torah is. Torah is something different. Torah is something unique. What is unique about Torah? Torah is the ability to unite with Hashem. When Hashem gives us the Torah, Hashem is really sharing himself with us. And when we study Torah, it's not that Hashem is taking his transcendent will and wisdom and bringing it down to impact and refine the world, but it's that we have the opportunity to elevate ourselves, to meet Hashem on his level, so to speak, and to have this real, deep, intimate, unified experience of connecting to Hashem. Tanya describes it like an embrace, this intimate embrace where our mind becomes completely unified with Hashem's chachma. And that process is something which doesn't have either of the qualities that we just described about planting, right? When we go through that process of really unifying our mind with Hashem, it's not an experience of refining or elevating our human selves. No, it's totally beyond that. The experience of studying Torah is not for the purpose of fixing or elevating ourselves or becoming better people. No, really, Torah essentially is just about this ability to unite our minds with Hashem's wisdom. And it transcends any of those specific purposes of actually having an impact on our world and on our, physical human existence. And in addition to that, it also doesn't have this quality of that sense of bittul, that sense of submission, putting aside ourselves for something higher or beyond us. No, Torah is not about that. Torah is not about submitting ourselves to something higher, because when we study Torah, we're on a level where we're not separate from Hashem at all. We're not this separate being that has to submit to something beyond us. We become unified with Hashem himself. Chazal tell us that when a Talmid Chacham studies Torah, then their words are literally like Hashem speaking through them. It's like Hashem's words are coming out of their mouths, right? So it's this level of unity that's way beyond just that experience of us, allowing ourselves to disintegrate, to put ourselves aside, to let ourselves be transparent to something beyond us. No, we're not just transparent. We become literally unified with Hashem to the point that Hashem speaks through us. Now, this also explains why there's a special emphasis when it comes to Torah learning that it be with enjoyment, with pleasure, right? It says that a person always has to study in a place that their heart desires, that they feel personally connected to it, right? When it comes to mitzvahs, we don't say that. We don't say you have to feel personally connected to the mitzvah, right? We do the mitzvah because that's Hashem's will. That's what Hashem is asking of us. We're submitting to something higher than ourselves. But when it comes to Torah, it's all about personal pleasure, right? And the reason why Torah learning is about that is because Torah is about us uniting with Hashem, and Torah is Hashem's pleasure, right? Torah is called the Eya Etzli Shashuim. It's Hashem's enjoyment. It's Hashem's pleasure. It's Hashem's deepest enjoyment is expressed in Torah. So when we're going to unite with Hashem by studying Torah, we actually experience that pleasure that Hashem experiences in Torah. And although it may be true that for us, our pleasure in Torah comes from a very basic human quality, that there's something intellectually stimulating about the Torah that we're learning. So it doesn't seem to be something that's so lofty and spiritual. And yet at the same time, the reason why on a deeper level we experience this pleasure in Torah learning is because of a pleasure that Hashem experiences in Torah. And this unity that we have with Hashem through Torah learning allows us to experience the same pleasure that Hashem experiences. And this now gives us insight into why mitzvahs in general are associated with grain, while Torah is associated with the fruit tree. Because grain is something which is just a bare necessity, right? We need grains in order for a person to survive, to be sustained, right? Mitzvahs are just there to make sure that we're refining the world and fulfilling those requirements of elevating the world and fulfilling its purpose. But Torah is something much more profound. Torah is like the fruit tree. Fruit is something which is not necessary for human survival. It's just for pleasure, right? It's sweet. It's enjoyable. It's something that brings us pleasure. And that is like the experience of Torah learning, which is really not about serving some practical purpose, but it's just this experience of unity and pleasure in Hashem that doesn't serve some other practical purpose of of refining and elevating the world. And this is why there's something more profound about Tu B'Shvat over any of the other Rosh Hashanahs, because Tu B'Shvat is really about celebrating that experience of Torah learning as it exists for itself, right? The value of Torah as just this essential pleasure in Hashem. Now, this is going to circle back and explain to us why Tu B'Shvat is on the 15th of the month. And it's interesting because all the other Rosh Hashanahs, as we would expect, fall out on the 1st of the month. And it is only Tu B'Shvat, which, according to Beis Hillel, is on the 15th. And this seems a little bit strange, even on a spiritual level, because the reason Chassidus explains that Rosh Hashanah in general is on the 1st of the month is because the cycle of the moon is very significant in terms of understanding the energy of the day. And the 1st of the month is when the moon is still just a tiny little speck, right? Just a tiny point. And that is symbolic of this idea that on a Rosh Hashanah is a day when it's like the potential for all that's going to come afterwards, right? It's like the beginning point, the birthday of what's going to come out of it, what's going to be developed from that point. So that is like linked to the beginning of the month when the moon is still in that very small point state. Now, we know that in general, the cycle of the moon is associated with the Jewish people and the relationship that we have with Hashem. The Gemara talks about this, that because the Jewish people calculate their calendar by the moon, there's something about the cycle of the moon that is inherently linked to the Jewish people and to our the state that we're in. And the Alter Rebbe Torah explains this a little bit, because just like the moon is reflecting the light of the sun, it doesn't really have any of its own light. This is symbolic of the Jewish people that are reflecting the light of our Ein Sof. And specifically when the moon is in its full state on the 15th of the month, the Zohar tells us that all of the Yamim Tovim, right, Sukkot and Pesach specifically, occur on the 15th of the month, because there's a certain joy and fullness that is expressed in our relationship with Hashem in the middle of the month when the moon is full and the moon is complete. So now we can understand why Tu B'Shvat is on the 15th of the month of Shvat and not the 1st of the month. Because specifically when the moon is full, right, just like on the other Yom Tovim of Sukkot and Pesach, that's when we can really experience this fullness that Tu B'Shvat is all about. Tu B'Shvat is about this experience of pleasure, of bringing our full selves into our relationship with Hashem. Not that sense of bittul that we experience through mitzvahs, but that sense of pleasure and enjoyment that we achieve through Torah, that pleasure of uniting with Hashem. And that is specifically symbolized and embodied by the full moon as opposed to the new moon. So what we've learned and what we've discovered is that Torah is really something very unique in terms of what it brings in our service of Hashem. And it is something that really allows us to tap into this experience of really uniting our full selves with Hashem, and on a very practical level, being able to experience that sense of pleasure and enjoyment in our Avodas Hashem. So I hope that this gave you new insight into what Tu B'Shvat's about, and also gave you a new appreciation and excitement for the power of Torah learning. Thank you so much for listening. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I really recommend you going on our website, getting the source booklet with all of the sources that we spoke about today, and really diving in for yourself and really finding your own meaning and passion and excitement for what Torah learning is really all about.